different video for you today. We are going to be creating a mixed media background using the brand new Distress Oxide in Kitsch Flamingo. So this video is going to be me creating the background. Then if you're interested in seeing the end result and the layout that I completed when I was finished with the background, you can head over to A Cherry on Top's blog. So let's get started. I'm going to show you exactly what you're going to need to be able to create this background. I'm going to be using my Tim Holtz glass media mat. This is the easiest way to clean up your mixed media backgrounds when you're done. It also is a really great just all around mat for anything you want to do that is messy. I really, really love it. So I have that. I have the thickest paper in my stash. So Basil Marshmallow will work. Vicky Booten's foundation paper will work. You just want something really heavy, really nice and thick and good quality paper because we're going to be using water. You need 2 Distress Oxide products. I'm using Kitsch Flamingo, but you could use any color. You just want the same color, Distress Oxide and Distress Embossing Glaze. So you want those 2 products. You want to use a spray bottle with some water. You can also grab a paintbrush if you want. I personally am not going to use a paintbrush, but I'm going to be using a spray bottle. You need some embossing ink. Hold on a second. Let me grab mine. This is my embossing ink. You can use whatever embossing ink you have. And you need a set of stamps. So I'm going to be using some Catherine Pooler butterfly stamps. Hold on, I'll show them to you. Sorry about that. I forgot to grab them all up before I started filming. These are the Happy Butterflies stamp set from Catherine Pooler. I also have the coordinating dies, but we're just going to use the stamps. So you need a stamp set. Anything will work. Anything you like. Flowers. Anything. Just whatever you like. It doesn't matter. So we need a stamp set. Embossing ink. Distress Oxide. And then it's coordinating glaze, media mat, water spritzer, and the thick white cardstock. You're also going to need, we're going to need an acrylic block and the things that you use for stamping. So keep that in mind as we start creating. Okay, let's get going on our background and create something beautiful. Okay, so as usual, as I start to work through this, I'm going to end up pulling out some more and some different tools than what I stated at the beginning, but that'll be okay. I'm using my Tim Holtz glass media mat, smooshing some of that beautiful Kitsch Flamingo down onto the mat, and then I'm spraying both the Distress Oxide ink and my paper with water. This is a wet on wet watercolor technique. I am going to end up using a paintbrush. And what I'm basically doing is just picking up color and plopping it down. So I have not put water on the entire sheet of paper, just the top third. About a third, maybe even a little bit of a quarter, but till I'm all finished, it'll be close to a third. So I am just adding layers and layers of color. And then I'm going to spray the color that's right on the paper so that we get lots of beautiful kind of drippy loveliness going on. So nice. This is one of my very favorite things to do. If you need more color in certain areas, which I did, I just added some more Kitsch Flamingo to my mixed media mat and just kept on going until I was happy with the amount of pink and with all of the color that I had going on. You see here, kind of adding a little bit more water. If you don't have a really, really thick watercolor, like really thick paper, you can always just use regular white cardstock, and then you just need to add a layer of gesso to it before you apply water. And you will get a bit of a different result. It'll be a little more fluid. It won't dry quite as fast as mine did, but that's okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue on here, adding layers and layers of color and layers of water until I am really happy with the way that this background looks. I love that drippiness that happens. And another thing I really love is how when you spray it right on that line with the water, you get something totally different. So I am checking my watercolor paper to make sure it is dry. It has to be bone dry before you do this next step. So add just a little bit of embossing powder onto your paper, make sure it all falls off. And then I use a powder tool as well for just to make really, really sure that this distress glaze is only going to stick where I want it to stick. Remember that paper has no memory. So if it warps a little bit, just you can manipulate it to be flat again. And when your layout is completely finished, just pop it underneath something heavy overnight and it will be fabulous the next morning. It's not. So the next thing that I really want to do here is I want to do some stamping. I'm going to grab my embossing ink pad. I'm going to grab these beautiful butterflies from Catherine Pooler. I'm going to stamp 3 of them in the top right corner. I'm going to stamp 3 of them in the bottom left. Some of my very best advice for stamping, whether it is embossing or something else, any kind of stamping. Don't lift up your acrylic block super quickly. So what you want to do is you want to get a good ink up on those butterflies and let the block sit just a little bit. Couple seconds, you'll get a much better impression. So next I'm going to just go ahead and emboss my butterflies using this beautiful distress glaze. I think distressed glaze is one of the coolest things. There's so much you can do with it. It's a really, really fun product. I find it to be a really fun product anyway. And when the new colors come out, I always purchase the Distress Ink Oxide and the Distress Glaze. So I'm just going to hit that with a heat tool. I have a really, really hot heat tool, so I'm moving really fast here because I don't want to burn my paper. My heat tool is a Wagner Studio heat tool, and it's like really hot. It's a really hot heat tool. So I have the 3 at the top done. Now I'm doing the 3 at the bottom. Same thing. Starting with that embossing powder or embossing ink. Ink it up really, really, really good. Put it down and then let it sit. Count to 10, count to 15. Let it sit for a minute. Let that ink really get good and transferred to that paper, and then pull it up. You only get one shot at this, obviously, because if you kind of mess it up or you don't stamp perfectly, you might have to pull out a MISTI or just lots and lots of ink. Leave it sit for a couple minutes, or not a couple minutes, couple seconds. And then you will get a much, much better impression. Because we're using such thick paper too, that really gives that ink time to adhere well to your paper. So I have my 3 butterflies at the top. I have my 3 butterflies at the bottom now. I'm just going to go ahead and grab my Distress Glaze. So this is a full background that doesn't require a lot of products, and it is a little messy, but you don't need it doesn't require a lot of product. It's pretty easy. As you can see here, we've put it together fairly quickly. The longest part to this layout, I think, is probably drying time, because you need to dry it between the 2 layers. If you have a heat tool that is not super hot, you can always kind of hit the Distress Oxide with your heat tool to keep it a little bit, to keep the dry time to a minimum. So I'm just going to go ahead. I am taking a paintbrush now because I do have a couple places where the embossing powder wanted to stick to the paper. Not too bad. I think it's because I forgot to put the powder tool. I was so worried about getting the top that I kind of missed the bottom. That's okay though. You can see there, you just get like a flat brush and it'll just like come right off. Now I'm turning on my heat tool, giving it a couple seconds to warm up and get good and hot. And then we're gonna hit the 3 butterflies at the bottom with the heat tool. So if you're interested in how this layout turned out, what the end result looks like, head over to Cherry on Top's blog where you will find photos of the finished layout and a list of all of the products that I used for my layout. And yeah, so cute, right? I love this technique, and I think that your finished layout is really fun and so pretty. And now you can have something, a great idea to use with your Kitsch Flamingo. Here are some beautiful close-ups. See how that mister bottle kind of, I love the close-ups because you can see where the mister bottle kind of hit, and those are my favorite areas. All right, everyone have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.